many things we hope to accomplish over the next few days is a broad understanding and reconfiguration of what the role of the public American university is in the arts broadly conceived, how public universities and private interests interact, we hope productively, how the arts finds a place on the college campus, and what is the broader educational mission of the teaching, performing, creating, and administering individuals who all share in the UC experience. After our continental breakfast and our welcome, we have the keynote by Professor Grant Kester, The State of the Arts. Let me just say a few things in welcoming Professor Kester, who in many ways has been the intellectual and academic point person for so many of the issues we're going to be raising here at the UCIRA conference. He is the chair of the Department of Visual Arts. He did his PhD at the University of Rochester. And he is the author and co-author of many remarkable studies on the nature of visual culture, American reform movements, aesthetic and media theory for several years in the 1990s. He was the editor of After Image. And he has a new book coming out from Duke University Press in 2011 titled The One and the Many, Agency in Contemporary Collaborative Art. Professor Kester will be introducing his interests and his concerns and giving us in his keynote what I hope will be something of a script for our intellectual and social experience over the next 2.5 days. So, Grant, it's an honor and a pleasure, and please join us here.
All right, this conference provides all of us in the fragmented UC Arts community with a rare opportunity to come together. It's a fortuitous moment for this assembly, as the past 2 years have witnessed... Is the sound okay? Can you hear?
Yes.
The past 2 years have witnessed a crisis unprecedented in the history of the UC system. In a pattern that is playing out around the globe... Go ahead and give me another one. There's going to be a few of these. Pattern is playing out around the globe. There we go. Public education has become the most recent battleground in the ongoing conservative assault on those institutions, such as Social Security, welfare, corporate regulatory agencies, and healthcare, that provide some challenge to the centrality of the market system in American life. As tenuous as it may seem, we occupy a space of relative autonomy that was won by years of struggle and resistance. It's time for all of us, students and faculty, staff and administrators, to come together. Rather than retreating from our commitment to a public discourse, to the necessary interconnection between art, culture, and political life, we must affirm it. We must take this crisis as an opportunity to recommit ourselves to the notion of open expression and experimentation in the arts. And in this spirit, I'd like to dedicate this keynote to the work of Ricardo Dominguez, Brett Stahlbaum, Amy Sarah Carroll, Micah Cardenas, and Elmer Mand of our department. Their work as Bang Lab represents a tradition of which we are justifiably proud in the visual arts, in which the boundaries of aesthetic autonomy are both challenged and redefined. If the previous year at UCSD has shown us nothing else, it is that the university is clearly not a world apart, insulated from the ideological and political pressures of society at large. The proliferation of nooses, clan hoods, and fraternity minstrelsism, as well as the ensuing protests and occupations, provided irrefutable evidence of a fact that is already familiar to many of our students, faculty, and staff. The campus is a site of both complicity with and resistance to forms of political, economic, racial, and cultural privilege. It is the locus of a distinct spatial pedagogy, embedded in the symbolic performance of architecture and quasi-public plazas, of his administrative offices and classrooms, laboratories, and libraries. Give me another image. See, that was supposed to be the first image, but things got mixed up, so I'll let you savor that little Adorno quote, and then give me about 5 or 10 seconds of that, and then you can show the next 3 or 4, one after another. This view stands in marked contrast to the notion of the university as a site of disinterested research, a domain of intellectual play and innovation, unencumbered by the utilitarian calculations of the market, consumer culture, or political expediency. There are vestigial traces of this belief, even in a school as unabashedly entrepreneurial as our own, in which the vicissitudes of genius are governed by IP protocols and material transfer agreements. We find it in the notion of an ostensibly pure form of scientific research devoted to expanding the frontiers of human knowledge, or in the pursuit of bold, nonlinear thinking that transcends traditional disciplinary boundaries, with some language from the UCSD website. However, the quasi-mythic autonomy of the university is retained in its purest form in the arts and humanities, in which the production of knowledge for its own sake still holds a perceived value. Or rather, we might refer more specifically to knowledge that is linked, not to some short-term expediency, the creation of a new drug or a patentable technology, but to the long-term generic expansion of human freedom and imagination. The assumption here being that humanity is capable of a more profound, less ephemeral form of progress via the expansion of our capacity for reflection about our condition as a species and our broader interconnection with the world around us. This quasi-spiritualized knowledge production may occur in the arts through the elaboration of new forms of creative expression, or in philosophy or history via unfolding insight into the deeper patterns of human existence. Of course, it is this very argument that has been under attack for the past year or more, as evidenced by Mark Yudoff's disingenuous uncertainty over, quote, who was going to pay the salary of the English department, end quote, even as English departments have been forced to justify their existence precisely by arguing that they are income generators for the university as a whole. At the same time, students and faculty from the arts and humanities have played a leading role in campus protests against both, yeah, you can rest on that one for a second, against both budget cuts and last year's racist incidents, and are often most concerned to disclose the subterranean political and economic determinants of higher education. We are thus presented with two very different ways in which to complicate the autonomy of the university. On the one hand, seeking to integrate it more seamlessly into the circuits of commercial development, to make it more subordinate to the demands of the market, and on the other, to expose this creeping integration as a symptom of the erosion of the university's raison d'etre and the growing pressure to place dwindling public monies in the service of private development. In each case, we also encountered two very different notions of the public and the obligations of a public university. You show the next couple of two or three. These are just some images I wanted to throw in from Alan Sekula's School as a Factory project, which he did not long after he left our department as an MFA student when he was teaching in Orange County. So they're from about 30 years ago. Kind of a study of the political economy of higher education in Southern California that's worth looking at again, I think, in our current moment. And when you get to the picture of a German dude, you can stop. This is hardly a new dynamic. From its inception in the Enlightenment, the modern concept of the university and of popular education has involved both resistance to and compliance with capitalism and the ethos of possessive individualism. It has moreover evolved in curious symmetry with modern notions of art and the aesthetic as sequestered realms dedicated to the preservation of certain utopian impulses carried over from our religious past in desacralized form. These include the harmonious reconciliation of the individual and the social, the cultivation of an ostensibly intrinsic ethical impulse, and a projective notion of humanity striving towards perfection or improvement. For Kant, in the metaphysics of morals, the realization of a non-coercive united will be brought about by the civilizing influence of ideas and commerce. He defines both books and money, Bücher and Geld, as, quote, objects or instruments of transfer. Books allow for the transfer of thoughts, and money allows for the transfer or exchange of things. As opposed to revolutionary change, this diffusion of knowledge must proceed gradually, as, quote, the public can only arrive at enlightenment slowly.